This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, this WWE star legitimately hurt on Raw, and Seth Rollins gives an update on his status. This is your WWE Survivor Series War Game Go Home podcast and the fallout of AEW Full Gear. Help me break it all down, sort out both of these shows and pay-per-views. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Cuz, what a jam-packed show. Happy holidays, everybody. I did something different with AEW. This week, I watched one match of the pay-per-view, one or two matches a day, and in my humble opinion, before we get into it all, it was an interesting pay-per-view, one in which there were surprises, but one in which my only note was they should fire all the producers. It was the same match style across the board. My only note was, did all the producers just have one holiday meeting and say, we're going to have the same match over and over and over and over again? Let's get into it. I just didn't feel any emotional attachment to the card, and I just left myself going, wow, they have done the same things over and over and over again, and the more blood that was spilled, the more I didn't care.
Yeah, and it gets really interesting in the middle of this card where you essentially have the same match back-to-back, just with different contestants. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. This show kicks off, and again, it's another AEW pay-per-view that, again, is jam-packed. It's long. We ended up getting additional matches added from the card that we originally had before the show took place. So the show kicks off with your pre-show, the $200,000 four-way match. Bang Bang Gang, Austin Gunn, Juice Robinson end up defeating Matt Caster and Anthony Bowens, Big Bill and Brian Keith, and the Outrunners for the $200,000 prize. Boom and Doom, Big Boom AJ and QT Marshall with Big Justice. They end up defeating Roppongi Vice, Rocky Romero and Trent Beretta. And then Eddie Kingston and Hook. This match got added. This was not on an original card. They end up defeating the Workhorsemen, JD Drake and Anthony Henry. This then leads into what is going to spill over into our main card. We have the CMML World Trios Championship. Sky Team, Mystico, Mascara Dorado, and Neon end up retaining and defeating the Don Callis family, Kazuchika Okada, Takeshita, and Hechicero to retain their titles. The interesting thing coming out of this match, like we predicted, there was going to be a little bit of a rub. There were going to be a couple of stiff blows delivered from Okada to Takeshita. That played out just the way we thought. At a certain point, Okada wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He was just hitting Takeshita. Really crazy, really weird. Both of these guys are in the Continental Classic that got announced later on in the program. So they will be beating each other up at some point here later on. Next, we had Pac and some assistance from Wheeler Yuta beating up Darby Allin. To get the win, Pac ends up using Sting's baseball bat to defeat Darby Allin. So again, the heels cheating to win, using multiple people and weapons to beat Darby Allin. We then had our four-way tag match. This was for the winner to earn the right to pick a stipulation in the tag team qualifiers as we proceed with crowning a new women's tag team in AEW. The Timeless Love Bombs, Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa end up defeating the Babes of Wrath, Sisters of Sin, and Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir. The AEW World Tag Team Championship changed hands. FTR, Cash Wheeler, Dax Harwood, ends up defeating Brodito to win this title. This went just the way we kind of thought it would. FTR deserves to be champions. Brodito sounds like this team's going to continue. This was one of those things where they just threw these guys together. Their chemistry works out really, really good. You got a big guy. You got a guy who's a bit of a high flyer. Works out really, really well. And they did a fantastic job with those belts. Changes hands to FTR. I expect to see this continue as Brodito works to get their championship back. Now, big surprise for both of us. The AEW National Championship Casino Gauntlet. The winner of this match, we should have seen it coming. We did not. Ricochet, using a little bit of help from Kuna and Tangaleoa end up defeating Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Orange Cassidy, Wheeler Yuta, Kevin Knight, Roger Strong, Mark Davis, Mike Bailey, and Matt Menard to win the title. What are your thoughts on Ricochet coming out the winner on this? Both of us had Bobby Lashley winning. We both thought that this championship was designed essentially to create a mid-tier championship for a guy like Bobby Lashley, maybe even Shelton Benjamin, but it was Ricochet who comes out the winner and is your new AEW national champion.
Yeah, it's definitely a surprise, which is good. It's a push for Ricochet, which is well-deserved. He gets to flex a little bit online, and he does get an opportunity to kind of say, hey, I did some things. So that's good. It's really special. It's really cool. So I thought, you know what? For the surprise, I thought the match, everybody got their stuff in. I thought it was a great match. It was one of the matches that you got a little bit of something a little different than something else. So I thought that, you know what? If you're going to, we've asked for AEW to kind of elevate people and put them on the map. Ricochet winning this is something I think for him can be a jump-off point if you do it correctly.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is something that can really springboard him. And if you give him a significant enough run, you might be able to make this championship feel relevant. And I feel like this is where AEW runs into a bit of a problem. They've got so many belts that are scattered all over the place. And at certain points, you tend to forget who's holding what and what the lineage is of that belt. I feel like if you do things right, you give Ricochet a nice run, you put him up against actual contenders, you can make this feel like it's worth a damn. Because you and I joked when they announced this, we were like, what are they doing? We don't need another one. And they came up with another one. It really and truly, when you break down AEW, they do have way too many belts. They did not need another one. But if they do things right, this can be meaningful. The issue is they have to execute it, and they almost have to execute it perfectly, because one slip up, we're going to look at it and we're going to be like, yeah, who cares? Nobody cares. You made this belt up. So fingers crossed they get it right. Fingers crossed for Ricochet. He makes it worth a damn, and hopefully he gets to face some real competition and, again, keep this belt relevant and make it worth something. Our next match was a no-holds-barred match. Kyle O'Reilly ends up defeating Jon Moxley. He had a little assistance from Marina Shafir. Moxley ends up attacking O'Reilly after the match. O'Reilly has a legit arm issue. He is legitimately banged up. He was supposed to be part of the Continental Classic. He is not. He is legitimately hurt. I believe they used part of this angle at the end to kind of sell some of that. I think the big story coming out of this is O'Reilly ends up defeating Moxley yet again. And Moxley can't seem to win a match. And at a certain point, he's cutting a promo in the back, and the Death Riders are all kind of looking at him, and they have this skeptical look on their face, like, we can't trust this guy. He can't go out there and win. Like, you've seen Pac get a win. You've seen multiple other wrestlers, part of the Death Riders, go out there and get wins, yet Jon Moxley, your leader, can't seem to get a victory. And they've done a good job of layering this story, specifically with Kyle O'Reilly, who I believe this was their third time they faced each other, and Kyle O'Reilly is 3-0 against him. I want to get your thoughts on the storytelling here, because it really feels like they are doing a really good job of undermining Jon Moxley's authority, making it appear as though he is he's essentially just kind of a puppet, right? He's the pseudo leader, but he's got really nothing to back up anything he's saying. And at a certain point, it feels as though this group is going to cannibalize itself, because Moxley was the head, but the head can't get anything done, and he's costing the Death Riders here. What do you make of all of this and how this has played out over the last couple of weeks? Because I think this is really, really good. I think it's very interesting for a guy like Jon Moxley.
No doubt. I put down best story, and I think that it's done a good job to elevate, and this is one of the purposes of what we wanted to see. Fletcher's done a great job. He's done some great work, and each match that he puts out there, and Jon Moxley, the storytelling's been great. I look at it from the perspective of, you know what, it elevates Jon Moxley, where the story now has the potential to lead to some feuds in the future, to elevate guys like Claudio and the Death Riders. So I'm very excited about where it's going to go. I thought that, okay, you know what? Yeah, the problem I had, the only thing I had a problem with was the storytelling and the psychology of all the matches were the same. And I am not moved by the gore anymore. It's too much. Like match after match after match, these guys are cutting themselves open, and it's requiring to the point where it's like, what, you want to have a whole body Crimson Mask for everybody to ooh and ah, and it's just really tough to have that match where it was in the card. But in the end, they're doing the best they can, knowing that they're going to have 7.5 hour pay-per-views, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, and you kind of see the similarities in the match where you have a no holds barred match, which really and truly probably should have been a submission match. That is then followed up by the TNT Championship match that was a no disqualification match. You essentially had the same exact match back to back, only this one had Mark Briscoe defeating Kyle Fletcher to win the title. I think it's questionable booking, and I think you can throw a flag on this. When you're running essentially the same match back to back, you're not spacing this out at all. I think there's an issue here. And really and truly, this all could have been fixed very simply by getting rid of the no holds barred stipulation, making it a submission match. That's what Kyle O'Reilly was doing to Jon Moxley. That's how he won. He submitted him. That's how he's beat him the last couple of times. He submitted him. It really should have been a submission match. If I recall correctly, that was something that we talked about on last week's show when we were previewing this. Like, this should have been a submission match. Instead, they run the same match back to back, and you see a lot of that those similar actions, right? The post-match beatdowns, the no DQs, the outside interference. There's just a lot of it in a lot of these matches on this pay-per-view, and it really did take away from it. That being said, Mark Briscoe winning, right call, I believe. I think it frees up Kyle Fletcher to do other things. It allows him to do different stuff with Don Callis, but to have the same match essentially back to back, I think was a big issue booking when you could have spaced this out a little bit different. You could have that Jon Moxley match be one of the first matches, and you could have put this TNT Championship match a little bit further down the card, or you could have flipped it some way. You could add one of these matches leading from the pre-show into the main show, and it would have been just fine. You could have done almost anything different than what they did, and instead they booked the exact same match back to back, and I think it hurt the pay-per-view.
Yeah, our next match moving forward, Kyle O'Reilly and Fletcher have to be guys that you push forward and get them over.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Kyle Fletcher, huge ceiling for this guy, especially working with Don Callis. Kyle O'Reilly, we're going to see what happens, dealing with that arm injury. Hopefully he can come back. Again, Kyle O'Reilly was a guy who was banged up. They finally gave him a little bit of running room here, and he's had quite a few really good matches with Jon Moxley, and now he's banged up again. So we'll see how long he'll be on the shelf. No word that I've heard of yet for how long he might be sidelined. Hopefully it's just a couple of weeks, and then he can get back, and they can give him a little bit of a push. It'd be nice. Our next match was the $1 million match. Josh Alexander and the Young Bucks end up defeating Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express. The big thing coming out of this is the Don Callis family ends up attacking Kenny Omega after the match. And Don Callis is trying to sell Matt and Nick on joining the Don Callis family. Matt and Nick end up turning their backs on Don Callis, run down to the ring, and end up helping take out the Don Callis family. And in the end, you have a hug in the middle of the ring with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. It seems as though the Elite are back. When we watched Dynamite, you had an interview with Kenny Omega in the back, and he basically said, I'm not sure where this is going to go, but this is what it is. And then you had the Young Bucks come out of his locker room. So, thumbs up. Hopefully the Elite is back, and hopefully we can get rid of whatever we're doing with Matt and Nick right now. It was funny when it initially started, when they were poor and they were broke. I feel like it's kind of run its route here, and we're kind of at the end of it. We need to transition to something else, and Kenny Omega being back with the Bucks, I think, is fantastic. Next, we had our AEW Women's World Championship. Chris Statlander outlast Mercedes Moné to retain her title. Thought it was a fantastic decision. We then get some questionable booking. And it makes you say, huh, what? The AEW World Championship match took place inside of a steel cage. Samoa Joe ends up defeating Hangman Page to win the title. Yes, you heard me right. Hangman Page, who just recently won that belt, was defeated by Samoa Joe in a steel cage. In this match, there were some interference. There was some interference from the Ops. You had Eddie Kingston come down to try to help Hangman Page. Hook ends up coming down, and he betrays Hangman Page, allowing Joe to pick up the win. That had me scratching my head. I was like, what the hell just happened here? And then Swerve's music hits, and now Swerve is back, and Swerve makes the save to help end the broadcast. And so now we've got Swerve and Hangman, and then we've got Hook joining the Ops, and it seems as though Swerve and Hangman are hell-bent on taking out the Ops. What are your thoughts on this main event? Because there's so much to unpack here. We have a new AEW World Heavyweight Champ. We have Hook switching sides. Eddie Kingston confused and baffled by it. Swerve Strickland's back. Hangman Page's title run and title reign is now at an end, and I don't even know if it felt significant. Please pick up wherever you want to pick up and start unpacking all of that, because there's a ton there.
Yeah, and the crowd finally woke up from the pay-per-view after all of that. Yeah, look, it was cool, but starting a match at midnight is crazy, bro. It's crazy to look at the timing of some of those matches. It was wild. Look, great, I understand it. Maybe too soon to take the belt off of Hangman Page, but I get it. Samoa Joe is somebody that you can draw natural heat with, and to tie into Swerve Strickland, I get it, but you also have to clean up some of the issues that Hangman had with Swerve that you got to kind of explain away a little bit. So, look, I thought that the timing of Hook was absolutely perfect. It definitely drew a reaction. It was like, okay, again, a lot of crimson. I mean, damn, I don't know. Samoa Joe got cut up on the top forehead. Damn, it was wild.
Yeah, it looked like he got some stitches or staples.
Yeah, it was a nasty cut. Again, you look at it and you say, okay, I can understand the purpose of having Samoa Joe. I can see where he can beat somebody. I don't know if he's somebody that draws money, but for a story that you want to kind of tell, to add some support with Hook, you elevate him a little bit in the role, and you say, all right. But the part that you got to kind of get is to say, how does really the catalyst is going to be Swerve Strickland. I think a lot of people wanted MJF in some way involved in a lot of this nonsense, but we'll figure it all out. And it was interesting the way they tried to tie it together on Dynamite, but overall, it was a B pay-per-view, and you could understand it. It wasn't totally out of the realm of possibility. Samoa Joe looked the part, and I love that he played into it and said, oh, some of y'all are mad, and it's great. But again, the way in which I would describe it is it was just very similar style of matches that wore the F out of that crowd, and by the time the good stuff happened, it was by midnight, and you're ending the pay-per-view at 12:30 doing a media scrum, and people are trying to ask good questions, and then Tony Khan's giving 10-minute answers to all these type of ideas. And I think the best question he asked is, what kind of wrestler do you look for? So it was interesting all the way overall, but yeah, you can't, I hope that he's serious when he says he listens to the online community, because again, it was far too long of a pay-per-view, and the producers need to really get with each other and say, hey, if we're going to have this style match, then this match has to look a little different, because across the board, it looked uniform when I watched it over the course of the week.
I agree with you 100%. Way too long again. And the match selection, right? Just the style of match and kind of what you got, it felt really and truly copy and paste. And it really took away from a show. And this crowd seemed hot to start, and then in the middle, it almost felt like they fell asleep. And having those two matches where they were incredibly similar, the no holds barred, and then you had the no DQ match, I feel like it really zapped the energy and sucked the energy out of the crowd, only for them to really wake up at the end of the steel cage match. And again, like you said, it's now going on 12 o'clock at night when you're starting your main event. If you're going to give these guys at least 20 minutes, probably should give them closer to a half hour with everything that you got to jam in here. You're now looking at close to a 12:30 end time, 12:45 by the time you cut the show. It becomes really challenging for a crowd to stay engaged in something like that. So at a certain point, you don't need 12 to 15 matches on a card. We're about to do a preview for a show that's only going to have 4. You don't need to have that many matches. Condense it a little bit. I know you want to give everybody time. You want to get everybody on the show. I understand that. But if you just cut this in half and give everybody adequate amount of time and tell good stories in the ring, I think you'll be in a much better spot. Nobody wants to stay up till midnight watching a pay-per-view. Nobody. And I get it. It's on a Saturday. So it makes it much more easy to digest because you don't necessarily have to work on Sunday. But geez Louise, man, nobody needs the 5-hour pay-per-view. We're good on the 5-hour pay-per-view. I need like 4 5-hour energies to watch these 5-hour pay-per-views. It's absolutely crazy. We take a quick look at calling the card before we jump into our next pay-per-view. Jock got 7 picks right. Doc got 4. I get the point. I increase my lead to 4 points. It's 11-7. So you got a little bit of work, but have no fear, my friend. Have no fear. We've got another pay-per-view on the way. We've got Survivor Series War Games taking place Saturday at 7 p.m. You can watch it on the ESPN app or other nefarious ways, or you can have Netflix if you're international. Before we jump into this pay-per-view, I want to touch base on the Raw Go Home show. To me, it felt like they mailed it in. It felt like it was a lot of entrances. It felt like it was a lot of posturing. And I think the highlight of the show was Brock Lesnar coming out for his entrance and slipping on his ass and falling. This show, if you could put it into one 15-second clip, it was that Brock Lesnar entrance where he comes out, goes to hit the stomp for his pyro, and falls on his ass. That's what this show was. This show did nothing to really move anything along. This show did nothing to really help cement anything. This show was essentially 2.5 hours, a 2.5 hour commercial for this pay-per-view coming up with not a whole lot of action. An assload of entrances, an assload of standing around, and seeing Brock Lesnar fall on that ass load was about all you got for Raw. What were your thoughts on Monday Night Raw this week?
Yeah, it sucked too because Penta got hurt. So you had a match stopped. That's never good. So it sucks. It was just disappointing from that standpoint of the cleanliness of the show. Exactly. It felt like, man, when you're at the Garden and you get all that and you get this, it just felt completely disjointed, and it was sloppy. A lot of botches, a lot of mistakes. It was not something that you'd say, oh my God, as for a go-home show that you're trying to accomplish. So a lot of mistakes. It just was, it felt like, holiday times, things are going crazy, and it was wild. So it was just disappointing. Best way to describe it, it was not the cleanest of shows.
Yeah, I think that's being polite the way you put it there. Well, let's get into this pay-per-view. Raw was Raw. You could just skip. Don't bother with it. It was what it was. We have our women's war game match. You got AJ Lee, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky taking on the heels Becky Lynch, the Kabuki Warriors, Nia Jax, and Lash Legend. I think the faces win? Question mark. I feel like this card has a buttload of coin flip matches. I'm going to go with the faces here, but I'm not sold. Who do you have winning this match?
No, because of what I'm going to pick in the other match, and I have to kind of take swings, I'm going to go with the heels. I feel like Becky Lynch has to be put over based on all the crap talking she's done, and I feel like that you got to get some nuclear heat on this. And I understand because, look, the heels, AJ Lee cost Becky Lynch. I feel like you got to set up that kind of payback in the future, and what better way than to have some of this play out over the War Games match. So give me Becky Lynch in the heels.
All right. We've got our Intercontinental Championship match. John Cena taking on Dominic Mysterio. Does Dominic get his belt back? That's the big question. What do you think?
Well, it's crazy, right? Because of the fact that, heels got to do what heels got to do, and you do realize that does the title really need to be on the line? It would be special. This is what makes it crazy, is that we could legit argue both sides equally for an hour to say that, getting Dominic Mysterio over would be important, but having John Cena with the Intercontinental title in the last match, but what, you're going to give it to Gunther? Maybe, I guess that was his belt. So in the end, it's been surprising, but I think that, it's about passing the torch, and can you realistically pass a torch without giving a belt? I don't think so. I don't think it's that. I mean, you just say, hey, John, win the match, and more importantly, Dom cheats, so you get a smooze match. You know what I mean? Where you don't actually have John Cena pin Dom. Dom cheats. More importantly for Dom is to get the nuclear heat. So Dom needs to cheat, and you got to set up something for WrestleMania with whoever comes out to save John Cena. So give me John Cena in the win, and he retains it, because you got to have the Intercontinental belt in the last match.
Interesting. I don't think you do. I'm going to go Dominic Mysterio. I think, look, you've done this job where you've tried to establish Dominic Mysterio, trying to give him the John Cena rub. What better way to give him the John Cena rub than to have him beat John Cena? John Cena has talked effusively about how good Dominic Mysterio has been. You go find different interviews all over the place. I think Dominic Mysterio gets the W here. Whether he cheats the win or not, he gets the W here. I think it only makes sense. I think this is one of those things. Remember, John Cena only has I think, one more show after this. I think it's this final one. It's the one that'll take place on Saturday night's main event. And yeah, we're assuming it's probably going to be Gunther there, but I think John Cena hands that title off because I don't think you necessarily need that belt on that show. So I'll go Dominic Mysterio. You go John Cena. Next, we've got our Women's World Championship match. Stephanie Vacour taking on Nikki Bella. I've got Vacour retaining. If she loses this belt here, we're going to have a lot to talk about because what the hell would be the point of even putting the belt on her if she's only going to have a few title defenses and you're going to end up giving it to Nikki Bella. So I've got Vacour winning. I don't see why you would have Nikki Bella win this match.
No doubt about it. It's going to be a great match. Hopefully Nikki can stay clear of some botches. And yeah, absolutely. It's going to be Vacour retaining. No doubt about it. I think this is almost a lock.
All right. We've got our men's War Game match. This we have listed as our main event. You've got the WWE Champion, Cody Rhodes, the World Heavyweight Champion, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso, taking on Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed. I'm not sure how you have the faces win this. I feel like you've done so much to invest in Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, and then you've kind of overshadowed them by adding Logan Paul, Drew McIntyre, and Brock Lesnar into this match. And when I look at it, who on that team could take a loss and be fine, right? Like you could have Logan Paul take the loss. That's fine. Really and truly, when you really break it down, you should have Brock Lesnar take the pin. But who's going to pin Brock Lesnar? Is it Roman Reigns? Is it Cody Rhodes? We've already seen those matches. I sure as hell don't think it's going to be Jimmy or Jay, and I don't want to see CM Punk take on Brock Lesnar. I don't think that's interesting. So I don't know how you have this go down. Again, this is another one of those coin flip matches that I think, as much grief as we give Triple H, and as weirdly as this match came together, I think when you look at it on paper and you're trying to pick a winner, it becomes very, very difficult to pick a winner just looking at it on paper. How do you see this match play out? Who gets the W? Is it the faces or is it the heels? Remember, the heels have been the ones who this company has been heavily investing in, and then it feels as though the closer we've gotten to this match, they've pulled back a little bit, adding in guys like Brock Lesnar, adding in guys like Drew McIntyre, adding in a guy like Logan Paul. So who gets the W here?
All right. We got to tie this out. Everybody's saying, and it's time, everybody's saying that this is going to set up WrestleMania. What has everybody been talking about? What has everybody been seeing? It's been, who's the best opponent for Cody Rhodes? Now, look, Roman Reigns is somebody that maybe has to tie into the family stuff with Jay and Jimmy and figure it out with Braun Breaker. So that kind of, you figure it's Roman Braun is kind of the passing of the torch, or Roman versus, you hype it up even more, versus Bronson Reed. So you got those two guys kind of tied up. Brock Lesnar, I'm curious what he does. He's always in and out. This might be it for the time being, where he shakes out in it. So I feel like the vision needs more. Now, it makes things complicated because you also, if you have Seth Rollins return at WrestleMania, I feel like you need a turn. And it's not going to be Cody Rhodes. Nobody wants Cody Rhodes to turn. So I feel like what's going to happen, and I'm going to predict you're right. I predict that, the Brock Lesnar's team with the vision ends up standing tall. But, everybody's a little bit upset, confused. They're standing tall, and then you get that moment where CM Punk hangs his head, and he's talking this to Cody, and the team's looking at each other, and then boom, you get the go to sleep from CM Punk. CM Punk joins the vision, and you got to get him back in the family. Like, look, you could say, hey, that whatever happened to cause the split up, but in the end, the vision is something that is uniquely situated where Paul Heyman wants the best of the best. And somehow or another, I think a visual of Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, and the two young guys, that's a fearsome foursome that you could roll with for the next few months, and you get the NWO. It would be a true shocker. I think you turn CM Punk heel, and you get after it for the next 4 months, and they just destroy until Seth comes back, and maybe you have Seth and Cody work, or, again, the matchup's probably, I think the best matchup is got to be CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. You could tell the story. So whoever, something's got to happen where it's got to be creative, and so that's where I look at it from the perspective of if you set up that match that way, but give me the heels, but give me something of a shock to make this all worthwhile. So in my opinion, the shocker, CM Punk rejoins the family, baby, the Paul Heyman family, and is part of the Vision. And I can't wait to see how they do it, if they do it, or what ends up happening moving forward.
Interesting. I kind of like that. I don't know if it happens, though. Look, I don't think that you have the heels lose in this match. I think the heels have to win, and it's strictly because of everything you're trying to do with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. I think the way you booked it is incredibly creative, and I think it would be fantastic. We've got some updates on Seth Rollins right here with some news and notes coming up. I don't know how it plays out. I don't know if he will be back for WrestleMania. But all that being said, if the way you lay it out works, it would make complete sense for him to then come back and want to take out the Vision with CM Punk at the head of it, especially with the way things were left when he went out. So it's a good way to tie everything in. It's a good way to refresh CM Punk and make him a heel, which could be a lot more interesting than what he's been doing with his babyface character. So let's recount this real quick. I've got both heel teams winning War Games. You've got the heel for the men, the faces for the women. I've got Dom Mysterio picking up the Intercontinental Championship while you've got John Cena retaining, and we both have Stephanie Vacour staying Women's World Champ. Take a quick look at calling the card again. I've got a 4-point lead on you, 11-7. What was your show of the week this week? I know we're recording this a little bit early, trying to get all of this in on a holiday weekend. I don't think Raw was worth a damn. I thought Dynamite was essentially just a replay of everything that you got at Full Gear. So all of that being said, haven't even watched SmackDown yet. But I'm going to give it to SmackDown just off of GP because I feel like it's got to be better than what they gave us for Raw. I know what the card is supposed to look like for SmackDown. And again, I feel like Dynamite was just here are highlights from the matches that took place. And here are some matches that you got that are going to take place off of the heels of those matches with a lot of the same guys. So I'm going to go SmackDown just like I said, off of GP.
No doubt about it. Just based on if you can just walk to the ring and not fall down, SmackDown should be the show of the week, baby.
There you go.
With this week's professional wrestling news and notes, I'm very curious. What made your list?
All right, a WWE star was legitimately hurt on Raw. You kind of spoiled it a little bit earlier, but WWE hosted 2 quarterfinal matches in the Last Time Is Now tournament to decide John Cena's final opponent on Monday Night Raw. In the first match, Gunther ended up defeating Carmelo Hayes, with Gunther set to face the winner of the second final match, which was Penta versus Solo Sikoa. However, Penta versus Solo only went a few minutes, about 2 actually, before Penta suffered a legit injury. After landing from a hurricanrana off the barricade on the outside of the ring, Penta appeared to injure his shoulder. If you go back and you watch it, you can see him slip his shoulder back into the socket. After they went to a commercial break, they came back and they ruled that he could not continue the match. As a result, Solo ends up winning, and it advanced him in the tournament to face Gunther in the semifinal match. So we've got 2 heels facing each other in the semifinal. Great job, guys. The injury to Penta comes just a couple of nights removed from the reunion of the Lucha Brothers with his brother Rey Fenix, which was their first match together since joining WWE, and it was a setup for AAA's Guerrera de Titans on December 20th. At that event, they were set to face Dominic Mysterio and El Grande Americano, collectively known as Los Gringos Locos 2.0. It's a bit of a nod and homage to Eddie Guerrero. So we'll see what happens. Sometimes with a shoulder dislocation, it could just be something where it's sore for a little bit. Sometimes when you go to pop it back into place, you can tear the labrum, and that leads to a surgery, and that leads to a lot of other problems. So we have to wait and see what's going to happen with Penta going forward. And finally, Seth Rollins gave an update on his status. On the latest episode of Burt Kreischer's Something Burning show, Rollins was on as a guest alongside with his wife, Becky Lynch, and discussed his injury. Rollins said, "I'm trying to find the silver linings. I get to spend more time with my daughter, which is great. More time at home. Once I get this thing off," he's pointed to his cast, which is like in another month, "then it might be full vacation mode for a little bit before I lock in and have to start training to get ready to come back. It'll probably be gradual. I don't even really know. My guess is it'll be about 8 to 12 weeks of like, okay, now I have to stop eating like an asshole, probably 12 weeks. Plus, we'll be moving right into WrestleMania season, so I'm hoping around February, after all of the holiday stuff, I can start to be like, okay, lock in, no more BS." Rollins suffered a shoulder injury in his match against Cody Rhodes at WWE Crown Jewel on October 11th and had to vacate the World Heavyweight Championship. WWE had to change a lot of major plans for the Survivor Series War Games, which is taking place this weekend, taking place on Saturday. The event the event's heading into WrestleMania season. So we'll see. It sounds like Rollins thinks he'll be back for WrestleMania. We'll see if everything goes well with his rehab. Again, a little skeptical. We'll see what takes place. I feel like it's going to be cutting it a little bit close, depending on how he bounces back and how he rehabs. But that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Always enjoy catching up with my guy on a holiday weekend. Make sure you follow Adam on X at AdamRSTROZ. Make sure you check us out at Detroit Podcast all throughout War Games. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Adam and I will come back next week and recap it. Yeah, definitely check out the interview that Becky Lynch did. A lot of people were commenting that Seth Rollins went to town on that chicken like he never ate before. He was eating it very weird, like he never ate meat for the last 5 years. It was very weird. But Becky Lynch made noise regarding how she talked about Lacey Evans. She kind of really came across like a bitch, but I think that's kind of what it was. I think that was just a heel interview in character. And it was crazy, but she said those things. And it was bold, it was wild, and that was what the intended consequence was. Bert Kreischer feeding people and having them talk shit is very interesting as a concept for a show. And that's what the power of podcasting is. It can be, there's no limits. You can have people eat and chill out and talk junk and record it. That's the beauty of this platform. And I can't wait to talk about the world of professional wrestling. And listen, no botches here for the last couple weeks. Doc and Jock have been thriving. The Detroit Sports Podcast has been going strong. We're all thankful for the world of professional wrestling and how you can tie in so much pop culture. And let's find out and see what's going on. Make sure everybody pay attention. Survivor Series, because you know what's up. It's War Games. Let's see how it all plays out. Let's see what kind of surprises and how big time it's going to be next week when we break it all down, because WrestleMania season's around the corner and there's going to be some setups, I believe, for WrestleMania. Let's talk soon, everybody, on the next episode of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.